Alrighty. Hi, I'm Hailey Rausch. I am a dietetics student here at Missouri State University. I was first going to school culinary arts, but I realized that nutrition was kind of my passion, so here I am. First of all, do you or have you ever known someone who has suffered from depression? I'm assuming the answer is yes. What would you think if I were to tell you that something as simple as just increasing your intake of vitamin D would help alleviate your depressive symptoms or help cure someone that you know who is suffering from depression? It sounds a little too good to be true, doesn't it? Well, as we all know, vitamin D has many health benefits. Among these benefits, there's been certain benefits that have increased research on, and including cardiovascular disease and diabetes, but one that's more recent is depression and the links between vitamin D and depression. So the sunshine vitamin, can it cure your sorrows? First, we're going to talk a little bit about vitamin D and give you a little bit of an introduction. Vitamin D is a fat-soluble vitamin. It's known as the sunshine vitamin, as I said before. Its adequate intake is 200 IUs, which is a little controversial now because we're starting to research and see if maybe we actually need more than that, and maybe this isn't actually enough. And as you get older, you'll want more as well. So there's different sources of vitamin D, including sunlight, which is your body can synthesize vitamin D from sunlight on your skin from cholesterol. Dietary, which is just food that you intake. It's not found in a lot of foods, so it's oftentimes fortified, and milk or cereal. And then also supplementation. One of the biggest supplements that you can see today is portobello powder. Portobello powder has it's almost an increasing fad for people, mainly vegans, because vegans have a hard time getting their vitamin D because they don't drink milk and they don't eat meat products. And also people who hear about all these new research outcomes and results of benefits of vitamin D, this is a way for them to increase their intake. So then functions of vitamin D include calcium absorption, aid in phosphorus absorption, regulating calcium levels in the blood, muscle function, and then brain-body communication, so like nerves, and then the immune system. And then now we can look at just a short introduction of depression so we can just fully understand all this. Depression is at least 2 weeks of a certain number of characterized symptoms of depression, which include loss of appetite, maybe weight loss or weight gain, insomnia, or sometimes too much sleep. It could be fatigue, extreme feelings of worthlessness, things like that. According to the CDC, 1 in 20 Americans of the age of at least 12 and over have reported current depression. So it's pretty common, and it's also very very costly. Depression all around, just in the year of 2010 alone, cost $210.5 billion just in that 1 year. There's many causes that can be linked to depression. This includes genetics, illness, if you have cancer, Parkinson's disease, life circumstances, what's going on in your life, economic status, if there's been a recent death. But all of these come down to one thing, which is chemical imbalance. And that's really what we're going to focus in on today. So chemical imbalance refers to the imbalance of neurotransmitters in your body. And this is due to the monoaminergic systems. They are responsible for regulating the neurotransmitters. And the neurotransmitters that are involved in mood, there's multiple, but the ones that really focus in on depression are serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine. The main thing to note here is that there's no way to directly measure a neurotransmitter amount that's in the brain, So this is what makes it slightly difficult to really understand depression and how it works and the real root causes, because there's so many. It's never due to just one neurotransmitter. It's very complicated, to say the least. So anyway, the way that it is measured is by measuring the metabolites from the cerebrospinal fluid, blood, or the urine, and a chemical imbalance. If you have too much neurotransmitter, then that will result in maybe mania or a euphoric feeling, and then too little neurotransmitter results in maybe depressive symptoms. So now we can look at vitamin D and its metabolic significance. Calcitriol is the active form of vitamin D. It is hormonally active and is the most utilized form of vitamin D. And calcitriol, after synthesis of vitamin D, it goes through a metabolic process, including the hydroxylation in the liver, and then again hydroxylated again in the kidney, and then that forms calcitriol, which is, like I said, our active form. The vitamin D receptors, there's tons and tons and tons of vitamin D receptors found in the brain, and the highest percentage receptors are associated with dopamine, which is really important because that is one of our, all neurotransmitters are, but dopamine is the most abundant. And so these are going to, this allows for communication and then also right here, like it says, the vitamin D receptor binding to vitamin D, and these are all the functions that it undergoes: calcium transport, the CNS, hair and skin, hormone secretion. So it has a lot of things that it does, so it's really important. So a way that the vitamin D receptors can relate to depression more is in Parkinson's disease. Vitamin D has been in a research study from the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition. Vitamin D has helped slow the degradation of the brain, because in Parkinson's disease, it is the loss of nerve cells, and those nerve cells that are targeted are the ones that primarily produce dopamine. So this can all be tied together to show us how, since vitamin D can then help people with Parkinson's disease, since the cells that are being targeted are the ones that are mainly dopamine. And also, as I said before, certain illnesses will put you at a greater risk for developing depression. And so Parkinson's disease is actually 50% of people with Parkinson's disease have depression. So this is a really, I think this is a really important thing to know, to see how not only can vitamin D help Parkinson's, but since they also commonly have depression, how those can be related and how vitamin D can help depression as well. Along with that, we all know that calcitriol is what helps regulate blood calcium regulation. Calcium is required for neurotransmitters to be released. So calcitriol will regulate the transcription of genes that codes for our calcium transport proteins. So if we don't have vitamin D present, our calcium transport proteins aren't being generated, and then we don't have calcium being transported, and then we don't have neurotransmitters being released. So this could be an indirect way of vitamin D being a factor. So if calcium is in excess, that would result in high neurotransmitter release. If it's decreased or too little, then we have too little neurotransmitter release. Okay. Now on to a couple of research studies. This one is found on the Journal of Nutrition and Disease. It was published in February 2015. In this study, it contained a placebo and also 8 weeks of people taking vitamin D supplementation. And this study looked at more than just depression, but it did look at depression, and it showed a positive improvement in all of them. However, overall, it showed an improvement in BDI scores, which is the Beck Depression Inventory. The Beck Depression Inventory is a self-reporting inventory of your depression symptoms. And so with an improvement of these scores, that means they had less of these negative symptoms. It also states how there is an increase, vitamin D allows for an increase in bioavailability of neurotransmitters. This is due to vitamin D increases the expression of tyrosine hydroxylase, which will then therefore increase the bioavailability of neurotransmitters, which this can all then be linked and correlated to depression. With that being said, here is another research study, because we can't base our sole research on one single research study. This research study actually does not support vitamin D as a cause of depression. However, it clearly states that vitamin D cannot be ruled out at all, and that it actually very much so could have a very positive link. It's just that this study wasn't in-depth enough. This study at the end, in the conclusion, it called for more in-depth placebo-controlling studies that were much larger in order to really understand. It also stated that maybe vitamin D might be the result of depression versus the cause of depression, which is a very interesting way of thinking about it as well. So, in conclusion, it's really unclear if true correlation is present between vitamin D and depression. However, there is, in fact, a strong causal link. Therefore, we need more research that's in depth, and in order to really understand all of the metabolic pathways and the ways that vitamin D can help in aiding with depression, or maybe even just alleviating certain symptoms. And these are my references.